Everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's the last video of 2019, which means it's New Year's Eve. And traditionally, for the last, this is our third year doing it, we have a lantern light-off. And that was thought up by my good friend Bob the Lantern Guy out in Thousand Oaks, California. He came up with the idea, and for the last 3 years, we've been, every New Year's Eve, we've been lighting up our lanterns. You know, we're kind of lantern collectors here, and there's a few others around the United States and all over the world, actually. A lot of people find these interesting. But now, if you haven't seen my first two, you know, I did kind of a quantity over quality. I just showed a bunch of different lanterns, but I have probably over, maybe close to 50. Not close to Bob. Bob's got, God, he's got to have over 60 now. But the one thing is that with some of these lanterns, they have a great history to them. And I decided for this year, for our last video, we would take 4 of my kind of, you know, unusual, somewhat favorite lanterns and just show them to you. I doubt you've seen at least probably one of them you haven't seen. So let's go check it out.
The first lantern is pretty interesting because this is a personal lantern, or what would be considered a torch, how they say it in the UK, because this is made in England. And it was a police flashlight, we call here in the United States, but actually it was called a torch. And it was a police would be issued this, and what it was pretty interesting. If you look at it, it had a bullseye lens on it, which would magnify the light, and you could see it was a lightweight version. Had a handle here. It also had a back. You could put it on your belt or something like that. And let me show you what it looked like. Now, to open this lantern, it was very simple. What you would do is there's a little latch here you could see on the side, and you would just flip that over like that, and that would expose the burner. And let's take this out here and give it a look at what it looks like. Now, this burner here, because it's so old, remember 1888, you know, that's older than most of us, right? And this was meant to burn whale oil. And unfortunately, I don't have any whale oil. I don't think I would really want it anyway because of where it came from. But we use kerosene in most of the modern lanterns. And you could see here how it had a dual wick system here. That's where the wicks would come up. And if you look at the type of wick it has a different kind of wick. They were kind of rope wicks they used to use, but this was meant for kind of like a whale oil. So I'm not going to try it with kerosene, but in order for you to get a chance to see what it looks like, what I'm going to do is I taped a little tea candle to a cap, and I'm going to put it in there, and I'll show you what it looks like. Now, one interesting feature that it did have, if you look over here, there's a little knob, and this knob would shield it, so you could shut the light off if you had to. You know, if somebody was, you know, trying to get to you or something like that, or you didn't want to have any light, or you're trying to sneak up on someone, you could have the light off, and then when you needed it, you could just put it on. So that's pretty interesting. Let me show you what it looks like lit. We're using this makeshift tea candle just to give you an idea. The other one would be brighter because it had 2 wicks, and it burned brighter than a candle would. But I'm going to close it here. I'll show you how easy it is. You would close it like that, and you could see here. Now I'm going to tilt it up so you can see the magnification does work. You know, you would get a definite increase in the power, and it does throw the beam in one direction. So I thought this was pretty interesting. 1888. Look where we've come now from all the way back there. Now our next lantern is pretty interesting. This is a #1 Carlton from Rochester, New York. And you can see the font written on here where it says Rochester, New York and #1 Carlton. Now, what's interesting about this lantern, take a look at it and tell me if you can figure out what you would think a lantern like this would be used for. Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, let me open it up so I'll show you here. And there's the glass lens. So what would that be used for? It is red. Okay, if you figured it out, it was a dark room lantern. So again, from the 1800s, you lift this up here, fold it back, and here was your font. And you could fill it up through this little cap here, and here was the wick. You would raise it and lower it like this. And we can actually, I have some kerosene. Let's fire this up. But first, let me show you how we would trim the wick. When you see the wick that looks like this, sometimes you just want to take a scissor and just cut that little black area off, and we'll do that now. Now, if ever you come across an old lantern and you want to try it out, the first thing you do is you, first of all, make sure there's no leaks in the font or anything. So you would fill it up to about 3/4. Never go above 3/4 full. You don't want to get close to the top here. You want to always keep it like about 3/4 full. That's as much as you put in. Put the kerosene in and let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes until the wick, and you'll see the wick starts to look saturated, because that's what a wick does. It wicks up the kerosene into the wick. Then to light it, you raise the wick up, we have it about 1/4 of an inch there. And again, you always want, if you're doing this indoors, it's a good idea. Always keep this close, because you never know what could happen. But never use gasoline, only kerosene or lamp oil. Then you'll light this up, and you'll see when it lights up, you bring it down a little bit, because you want just a small light, just like that. You don't want any smoking, any black soot to come up. When it's lit like that, you close the lantern up, and now it's ready. Let's take a look at what it looks like lit. Okay, and here's what that looks like lit. You could see now, that is a beautiful red color there. It's a nice red color. And this would be enough to just change the film, because, you know, the film is sensitive to light, so you can only have this in there. And that was a darkroom light, so very nice, huh? I like that one. Okay, next up we have another beautiful lantern here. You don't see these too often unless you live in the UK, because this is another beautiful British-made lantern. And this is a railroad lantern, and it's known as a tricolor lantern. And I'll show you why. It has a glass lens. And let me show you what's so interesting about this is that when you open it up here, to open this one up, you pull that lever up. See, that lever opens up, and then the lens will open up. Now you can see here, there's 3 different color lenses. And how you do it is there's a little lever back here. Push that lever back, and you spin it, and then there's a little detent that'll lock it into the next color. And you'll see it here. It changes colors. You know, you'll have different colors, and then there'll be a clear one. So I always thought that was really interesting. And you can see when you take it out here what it actually looks like. There's 3 actual glass lenses, and this was a railroad lantern, so that they could have different signals for different railroads. And over here is the font, pulls right out like this. And you can see what a beautiful little font that is with the reflector. Let's get some kerosene in here and fire that. Now this one here has a very interesting font. If you look at it here, because of the reflector. Now I just cleaned the reflector a little bit. Don't use any harsh chemicals on these. A lot of these were nickel plated, and nickel doesn't hold up really well. I trimmed the wick off, as you could see. Now to open this, there's no screw cap to fill the font, if you could see. And that's because what you do is, you see that little wire lever here? You turn this here until the handle comes out from underneath that wire lever, and then you just wiggle it a little bit, and that whole font will come out with the wick. Okay, now if that wick gets too short, obviously you have to replace the wick, but that's what will wick up the kerosene when we put in. So we're going to put a little bit of kerosene in here, put this back together, let it sit for a few minutes so this gets saturated, and again you lower the wick down so it saturates, and then we'll try it out. Now some interesting markings on here. This one actually was made, and you can see here the date, 1956, and I believe that's Birmingham it was made in. And so these did go for a long time. They were using these for quite a while. So now when you have your font, the wick is all absorbed. Again, you raise it up a little bit, and then we'll light it up. Here we go. Again, take it down so it's not sooting. You can always raise it a little bit, but give it a second. Again, you got the reflector back there, which helps out. Now you take it like this. You place it into the lantern here like this. There's a little pin detent to make sure that it lines up, and it is in correctly now. And you can see there, it's just a little bit high. We'll lower it just a little bit, and so it's not smoking right there. And then you place this in, and we'll put it with the clear side first. You have to hold that little lever back here, place this in, and close the front. And now when you close the front, she's ready to go. And let me show you what it looks like lit. Okay, there it is lit up. And isn't that a beautiful, look at that. This is one of my favorite lanterns, like I told you. Now, you can see here, that's the clear flame. If I rotate it 90 degrees, it turns into a green. You can see that's a green glow on there. Now, if I rotate it again 90 degrees, it turns into an amber. And then if I turn it one more time, it'll turn into the red. And that's how you can see. You lock it in, And now you didn't have to worry about sending the wrong signal. So just a beautiful lantern, huh? And really heavy duty, well made. And this is, these were made to last through the nuclear war. These and the cockroaches.
Okay, next up is my all-time favorite lantern, and there's a little backstory that goes to it. And remember, I was talking about the Browsery, that antique shop that I used to go to when I was a kid, and all the way up through my 40s, and you know, that's when Frank, they closed the Browsery, and he moved since then. If I don't know if Frank's still alive, he would be. He'd be about 97 years old, but I wouldn't put it past him because he was a tough old bird, and he was actually a Marine hero. But let me tell you a little bit. Frank, when I went into the store, and I told you Frank liked me, Frank said to me, he says, you know, he says, you collect lanterns? At the time, I didn't. I said, no. He goes, you need to buy that lantern. And I was like, really? And I said, why? And he says, it's for you. He says, just pick it up. He says, you'll like it. And I think it was like, he charged me $45 for this lantern, which might seem like a lot of money. But I like railroad stuff, and I have model trains. So let me show you this cool lantern.
And here it is. This is an Adlake railroad lantern. It went on a post you could see over here. And it's a 4-way lantern, which meant it was you know, if the train was okay to go, it would be green. And if the train was supposed to stop, it would turn red. And it had 4 lenses, beautiful lenses in here, glass lenses. And the best part about this is it's NOS, which means it was never fired. New old stock. Let me show you what the inside looks like. Now, to get at the inside, Stephen, to light this lantern, remember, these were meant to be on 12 hours at a time or whatever. So first thing you do is you raise up the cap here like this, and there's a chimney, okay? You take out the chimney, that's the chimney here. And then there's a chimney housing that goes around it. That just makes sure, again, look at all the ventilation holes and everything. Never fired, NOS. Now, once that's open, you close this again, and there's a little lever here. You raise that up, and then you open the whole top part here, and you can see here there's the burner inside. Now if you look over here, there's where you adjust it. You pull that out, it's on a spring, and that releases the burner to come up and out. You have to pull it back again. It's on a spring, and then the whole burner comes out like this. And let me show you now. Here is the burner, and you can see this little lever here is what that outside spring-handled lever goes to. That's how you adjust the height of the wick. And you can see it's got a big font here, which could, you know, this thing could run for a week if it had to. And when you raise this up like this, you unscrew it, and you could see there's your brand new wick, never used. It was a felt wick, and again, there was never any fluid in there. Now, here's the thing. If you light this, if it's a collector's item, obviously, and if you light it one time, it's like when you drive a car off of the showroom floor. You know, it takes away like a lot of value because this is new old stock. Once you light it, it's no longer new old stock. So guess what we're going to do? That's right, we're going to light her up. Okay, and here she is lit. I'll shut this one light off to give it a little bit more effect, but I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, why would you take half the value away from this couple $100 off this lamp just to light it? Well, it's New Year's Eve, and how often do you get to light a lantern for the first time, especially one that, I mean, I've had this lantern for at least 25 years, and so it probably goes back to the 40s or something like that, or maybe early 50s, whatever. But how nice is that, huh? First time lighting, and you could see how that fluted lens, that's a long time wick in there, they call that, so that it burns a long time. But you see what a brightness it does, and at night you would be able to see this for quite a distance. So I thought that's a pretty interesting lantern, huh? So there's our 2020 New Year's Eve lantern light off, and just out of curiosity, which one of these is your favorite?
So in closing, I want to wish you all a very happy and healthy new year for the upcoming 2020. I can't believe it. And thank you so much for tuning in. And let's say goodbye to 2019. A special thanks to Bob on the West Coast, Thousand Oaks. And tune in, see what Bob's got going on. All right, everybody, take care. Happy New Year.